Welcome to the Visionary Chronicles, a podcast dedicated to uncovering the strategies and insights that drive innovative, disruptive businesses. Join us as we explore the mindsets, cultures, and solutions powering the next generation of industry leaders and creative trailblazers. Whether you're seeking to inject new life into your organization or spark transformative growth, the Visionary Chronicles is your guide to executable, cutting-edge business strategy. Hello and welcome to the Visionary Chronicles. Appreciate you joining us again today. We're continuing on our series of The Road to Visionary Leadership. Today we're on Chronicle 7, Measuring and Celebrating Success, a great subject, and one that I'm looking forward to talking to you about today as well. So also I wanted to thank and give a shout out to all of those listeners that have given me such great feedback on this series. It's actually the first series that I've done with the Visionary Chronicles, so I'm glad to hear that we've had such tremendous feedback, not only feedback, but also comments on how they've been able to apply what I've talked about in this series. So this series also is inspired by the new book that I'm going to be releasing in June 30th actually, The Visionary Leader, the Success Principles of the World's Greatest Visionaries. We've gotten some great initial feedback, great new reviews, Publishers Weekly, and it's available for pre-sale now through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, really all global retailers. And this is a follow-up to my first fortunately award-winning bestseller book, The Visionary Brand, the Success Formula Behind the World's Most Visionary Brands. So I've gone from Visionary Leader to the Visionary Brand. So hopefully you enjoy the book, and we'll talk about, at the end of the podcast, a special offer that I have on a free ebook for those that are interested in getting an initial look at the Visionary Leader and a review for the book as well. So we've also, in addition to the Visionary Brand, the Visionary Leader, we've been very busy. We also created the Visionary Brand Master Course. And that was obviously from the book, The Visionary Brand, and that's available through the visionaryfiles.com. So that's a 18 chapter, I'll call it. Takes you literally step by step through the book, how to apply the principles that we talk about in the Visionary Brand. And we've had a lot of entrepreneurs, business owners, business leaders that have taken the course, again, giving us great feedback on the course. And we released that a few months ago and have had great feedback on that as well. So we really appreciate that. So for today, we're going to start out with a quote from Alexander the Great. And I talk about Alexander in the book, The Visionary Leader. And a great quote from him is, "I'm not afraid of an army of lions led by a sheep. I'm actually afraid of an army of sheep led by a lion." Now, that's Alexander the Great. So in this series, The Road to Visionary Leadership, we've explored defining traits of visionaries who really challenge the status quo. And that's really what I like to talk about when we talk about visionary leadership, is not just standing still, but doing something, impacting our society, impacting how we do things on a day-to-day basis, making us more efficient, more effective, whatever that happens to be, and inspiring transformation and building lasting legacies. And that's really what the Visionary Leader book is about. I talk about everybody from Socrates to Gandhi, Martin Luther King, Lincoln, all of these great leaders, all the way up to the leaders that we have today and Steve Jobs. So in the Seventh Chronicle, we'll explore a really, what I call kind of this, often it's really overlooked, but it's extremely essential aspect of leadership if you want to be a successful visionary leader. And this subject is measuring and celebrating success. It's really what I call a piece of the culture, but a very, very important piece of the culture is celebrating success. It also extends into leadership humility, leadership willingness to give credit to others. So before we get into the Chronicle 7, I'd like to give a quick recap. For those that have been with us through the entire series, they'll know what we're talking about, what I'm talking about here on these episodes. So we're on Chronicle 7. So if you haven't listened to the first 6, we have them on YouTube. We have them across Podbean, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Everywhere you can get a podcast, these are there through the Visionary Chronicles. But in episode 184, that was our very first chronicle with the Road to Visionary Leadership series. We talked about understanding visionary leadership and the mindset that they have. We've explored that, what I call mental framework that defines visionary leaders, their ability to see beyond the present and the future, challenging the conventional thinking that we're all so used to, and the ability for them to inspire others to believe in a greater cause and a greater mission. In episode 186, Chronicle 2, we talked about building a culture of innovation. This is really, really critical one for you to listen to, because either you're a brand or you're a commodity. Without innovation pipeline, without a creative difference and a point of difference with your company, you can't just call yourself a brand. You are a commodity unless you have some culture of innovation that you've instilled passionately inside of your company to make you eventually and earning yourself the TAG brand. So I talk about that in building a culture of innovation. We discussed how leaders create environments. They foster this great environment of creativity, experimentation, and what I call fearless problem solving. In episode 187, which is Chronicle 3, we talk about strategic foresight, this future casting, I call it. I have that in the book as well. These leaders that will future cast, set a vision, and be able to spell out the steps and build a team that then executes that vision. Nobody's an island. Any great visionary leader has executed their vision through a team and given credit to that team as a result of successfully executing that vision. So I talk about that in strategic foresight and planning. We examined how visionaries anticipate the future and strategically position their teams for long-term success. In episode 188 in Chronicle 4, we talk about effective communication and inspiring greatness. I've seen so many teams and leaders with brands, both myself through Adidas and Nike and TaylorMade and all of the different brands that I've been with, but also with Liquid Mind, where we do whiteboarding with our teams and we talk about visionary leadership and what it takes. And communication is a real challenge for leaders. They either don't want to do it or they feel like they don't have the time to do it. There always seems to be an excuse not to do it. So I feel effective communication and inspiring greatness in others is something that's a legacy that they'll leave with their team when they're far away from where you've been and having managed them in the early or latter part of their career. So we emphasize the importance of clarity, influence, motivation, and leadership, because a vision really without communication is merely an idea. Think about that for a minute. When you talk about people spewing these great visions they have, it's merely an idea unless you communicate it passionately to your team that can help you execute and commercialize that vision. Episode 190 was Chronicle 5. We talked about leading through change. It's so critical. And it's very timely with the recent COVID, where we had to basically shut down the world. Nobody was used to that change. So we talked about the challenge of navigating transformation, overcoming resistance from everybody around you, controlling the panic syndrome, turning disruption into an opportunity for growth. And I love the word disruption because the context of disruption can be utilized in a couple different ways. One, people talk about it on product or service. Another one is a disruption is something that happens without you knowing and taking advantage of that opportunity. Very few people do that. So I talk about that in episode 190. Episode 191 is Chronicle 6, how to effectively communicate and inspire greatness in others. The ability to communicate effectively and inspire greatness is a key trait for visionary leaders. So visionary leaders, today we're talking about the next segment in the visionary leadership, the road to visionary leadership. You know, visionary leaders, rather, don't just have bold ideas. You know, they possess this skill, this ability to articulate their vision effectively with clarity and passion, consistently, authentically, and they're motivating everybody around them. And that's the key. Many times people think all a great visionary leader has to do is, well, really, I just have to motivate the product team to do great designs, and that product gets commercialized, and we are then a visionary brand that's generational. That's not true. You need to motivate everybody inside of that team. You are the leader of that team. You have the vision for the company or brand, but you need to have the people around you in every department executing flawlessly in order for you to continue to keep your edge for generations. And very few brands have been able to achieve that. That's why there's very few. I talk about that in the Visionary Brand book. There's very few visionary brands. And there's a reason for that, because it takes work. So visionary leaders understand that success is not just about achieving milestones. It's about defining the right metrics, continuously improving, and fostering this culture of recognition and motivation. That's what we're going to talk about today. Those most impactful leaders that I've seen and brands that I've been around and with are those that not only set ambitious goals that most people look at and they go, there was no way we're going to be able to achieve that. We go all the way back to the Henry Fords of the world and the Elon Musk today and Steve Jobs, all these great visionary ideas that everybody feels is impossible until a visionary sets the path to success. But they also take the time to acknowledge progress along the way, and they celebrate victories, big or small. So in this episode, we'll break down how visionary leaders track progress, how they measure impact, and how they inspire their teams, not only consistently, but even more importantly, authentically, through strategic recognition and celebration. So the first piece I look at is defining success. You know, what does this look like? The visionary mindset. And success isn't just about profits or growth. It's about impact you have as a company or a brand, as a leader, innovation, and it's your legacy. I talk about this in the Visionary Leader because when there's a legacy change in a brand or a company, one leader takes over for the previous leader. There's a legacy that's being taken over. So the visionary mindset in defining success isn't about profits or growth. It's about the impact you have in the innovation pipeline that you built and also the legacy that you built along the way. Think of Apple with Steve Jobs. Think of that huge tsunami wave that he left for Tim Cook to try and inherit. But he allowed Apple to surf that tsunami and wave for literally 15 years or since his death. So visionary leaders define success through long-term lens. They look at not only short-term strategies, but they look at long-term vision rather than short-term wins. So the most successful companies you're going to see measure success beyond revenue, focusing on their culture, purpose, and customer impact. Again, I go back to culture being one of the key things most people forget about. Unless you have a great culture, you can't call yourself a brand because there's no passion around what you're doing from a product or service perspective. You have to have a purpose in what you're doing as a brand. What is your intention? How are you going to make our society better? How are you going to make us more efficient? And the customer impact that you have as a result of that. And I love Apple and Steve back in the day when he said simple is sophisticated. That's customer impact because of the experience and journey that they've had along the way with Apple. They'll continue to buy, and as a result, it's customer lifetime value that they can aggregate into their brand equity. So the second we'll talk about is measuring success. So what does this look like for key metrics for visionary leadership? When you look at these metrics, you have to have vision and mission alignment, number one. So the question you have to ask yourself, and I'm going to ask you a few questions here, and I want you to think about this, either how far away you are or how close you are to achieving this. Maybe some of you have executed these. I've really not found anybody that's successfully executed all of these, including Apple. Apple's probably the closest, but you'll have many companies that have one or two of these. But the intent here is that you try to find answers to each one of these questions. So vision and mission alignment. So here's my question. Are your actions aligned with your greater purpose? Interesting question, isn't it? Because when I said vision and mission alignment, what's the end result of that? It's a purpose behind your brand. So it's aligned with a greater purpose. So everything that you're doing, does it have a purpose? That if somebody, I always talk to brands and leaders of brands, and I say, if somebody new came into your brand or company, what would you tell them is your purpose? How are you different? How are you impacting society, the environment? Whatever you're doing, how are you making people more efficient, making their life easier, and doing it without them asking you? A second question, or the second area rather, is innovation and growth. How is your company pioneering new ideas and evolving? And this isn't a one-hit wonder game. It's bullshit. If you think you've got one product and you think you're a brand, it's like a one-hit wonder back in the 80s. Hey, these were kick-ass songs, and people still listen to them today, but they're not a legendary rock band. When you're a one-hit wonder, it's the same thing on a company. Innovation and growth is key to measuring success as a visionary leader. And so when you look at this, is your company pioneering new ideas and evolving? And I say evolving because that's a critical one as well, because you not only need new ideas, you need to evolve these ideas and have drawdown. We talked about the supply and demand chain. So it's a lot of opportunity, but you need to understand, ask yourself that question, is your company pioneering new ideas or evolving? So ask yourself that. The second is that customer loyalty and brand love. I love literally the word love. When you talk about brand love, does your community love your product? Do they love your brand? I've seen so many brands that we work with that the customers, when they say, we love your product, I mean, that's quite an emotion when you think about it. And would you say that your customer loves your product? Are they loyal to your product? Do they keep coming back? So these are things that are critical to the overall success of your brand and the success of your company when you start talking about measuring and celebrating success like we're talking about today. So when you talk about customer loyalty and brand love, here's the question I have for you. Are you creating meaningful connections with your audience or your community? Meaningful connections, I guess, could be converted to engagement. Do you engage with your customers? Are you creating meaningful connections with your audience? Ask yourself that question. That goes back to customer loyalty and brand love. So we've got vision and mission alignment 1, innovation and growth 2, customer loyalty and brand love 3. Number 4 is employee engagement and culture. Here's the question. Is your team motivated and inspired to contribute their best on a day-to-day basis? Do you know if they're motivated? I can tell you there's so many leaders when I talk to their team first, and then I talk to the leader second. I'm sure you've already answered this question. You know that there's different interpretations of what they think the culture is and the motivation and passion around that culture. It's different. More often than not, it's the team goes, no, I don't have passion around the brand or this company, and I don't even consider it a brand. We don't really have any purpose, nor do we really have anybody setting the vision at the top that's passionately drawing it down to us on a day-to-day basis. So that's employee engagement and culture. So is your team motivated? So the one before that was your community. The second one is your employees. The third is a sustainable impact. With our environment today and the culture that we're in today, that you don't have to be out waving flags or anything, but you got to have some type of sustainable impact. Be authentic. If you say what you do rather than do what you say, make sure that are you leaving a positive, lasting imprint on your industry and society. Find a way to have a positive change in your category, your company, the society that leaves a lasting impact and a legacy. So ask yourself that question, sustainable impact. Are you leaving a positive, lasting impact on your industry and society as a whole? So again, repeating these, measuring success. These are questions for you. Are your actions aligned with a greater purpose? Number one. Number two, is your company pioneering new ideas and evolving continually? Number three is, are you creating meaningful connections with your audience and community? Number four is your team motivated and inspired to contribute their best on a day-to-day basis? And the last is, are you leaving a positive, lasting imprint on your industry and society? The next is celebrating success, which is so critical to these questions I just asked you. Visionary leaders understand that recognition fuels motivation and performance in your team. So having that recognition, and I've heard it many times, and some of it's true, some of it's not. We all like money. But I will tell you, just as important is everybody loves recognition for what they've done for the brand or the company. This is where humility comes into leadership. I've never been around a visionary leader I've read about or had it in my book. All the visionary leaders that I outline in the book, all of them had humility. The reason that they have humility is because they knew their ability. So if you have humility, you realize your ability. And what that means is those that are insecure don't have humility and want all of the credit. Those that are not insecure don't need the credit and are humble, and their team follows them. So they understand that recognition fuels motivation and performance. Celebration isn't just about rewarding outcomes, but it's also acknowledging efforts and progress. Give a reward. Here's what I want you to do on the product team. Give a reward to somebody that fails because they took a risk. They couldn't commercialize something, it didn't work, or the experiment didn't work. Recognize the failure and the risk and make sure everybody sees it. It's a tough one to do, I get it. But it also sets a culture for your company that you're willing to take risk in order for you to succeed. And by the way, no great company or product has ever succeeded without failing first. So get a culture of failure first and recognize that failure. Too many times, and we should recognize success, but too many times, and we don't recognize failure. So creating a culture of appreciation strengthens team morale, creativity, and long-term success. The last I wanted to talk about was inspiring continued excellence in your company. Ways to celebrate success. Many times I'll get that question from leaders. Well, how do I celebrate success with my team? These little incremental celebrations. I don't have time for it. I don't know what should or should not be celebrated. And my answer back to them is, number one, make the time. When you see something, big or small, small's even better, by the way, than big. Because what happens with a big project? It's not a big project that happens all at once. Big projects are conquered one step at a time. So reward the steps, not the pinnacle. So the first on this is continued excellence on celebrating success. First is public acknowledgement of the success to your team and to the company. Share success stories in company meetings or on social platforms. Recognize people for their success. The second is personal recognition for tailoring this appreciation based on individual contributions of your team. So one can be team. Second can be personalized recognition inside of your team. The third could be team celebration. I always call it get off campus. Start doing some personal interaction with professional engagement. You don't always need to be in the office talking about work. That's boring. Leaders need to be with their team expressing interest in their personal life. So organize events, do some retreats, or just shout outs to celebrate milestones of your team. These are all important. And the last is, not last, but I feel kind of the most important from having worked with so many brands and teams, is this continual growth mindset. Reinforce the idea with your team that success is part of this ongoing journey. If you've got a bigger project, and I used to work back in the day, and this is really back in the day, satellite integration for military satellites. And you're talking about years that you don't see any progress on things, or months. So reinforce the idea that success is part of an ongoing journey. And that's why you need these incremental celebrations of success. So as you go through these, hopefully this has helped you understand how to celebrate with your team. So the legacy of measured success, and these are kind of my final thoughts as I do with these podcasts, is measuring and celebrating success isn't about looking back. It's about building momentum for your future. And as a visionary leader, your ability to define meaningful, authentic success, tracking the progress along the way and acknowledging success, and recognizing that achievement without you standing on the pedestal and having everybody underneath you. And I look at it very similar to the Olympics, is put your team up on those pedestals and stand back and admire your team. And know that your team could not have achieved their success without your vision. So recognize achievement. This will determine not just your impact, but think about this one as a leader. Not only your impact, but it's going to impact your legacy you leave behind. Think about that one. That for me was so important when we had team members on the brands that I worked with and the brands that we work with today on Liquid Mind, is that you leaving that legacy behind. I talked to so many leaders that go, oh, I'm so sad to see this person go. I don't know what I'm going to do. And I just say, congratulate yourself, because they've moved up that totem pole because of you, and you've left a legacy that they'll always remember. So those are the important thoughts that I have on this Chronicle 7, the road to visionary leadership. And hopefully you found this helpful. And I want to thank you for tuning in today on the Visionary Chronicles. I know your time is precious, and I always appreciate that. But if you've enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe. And I think even more importantly, pass it on to somebody that you feel would be inspired about what I'm talking about today, not only on the Road to Visionary Leadership series, but all of the podcasts that we do. There's so many podcasts out there today that I just say aren't worth listening to. Why waste your time? And I've always been proud of the fact that Vin Scully used to say, I'm the great storyteller of other people's great achievements. Think about that on a podcast. And we're going to bring visionary leaders on, and we've got an incredible series coming up that we're going to bring some people back in the book back to life. And so I hope you'll be tuning in for that as well. That's going to be coming up in the next few weeks here. And it's, I think, revolutionary and fun. I've already interviewed a few of the people, and it's been a blast. So hopefully you'll find that what I talk about is things that I've experienced or things that I've learned along the way. And you can ask me questions. You don't need to go to the person I'm interviewing. So hopefully you'll appreciate that as well. So please pass this on, subscribe, review. It's always appreciated. And if you can, again, just share this with your network. And I talked about it earlier with my new book, The Visionary Leader. It's over my shoulder here. The next episode we have, next Chronicle, which is Chronicle 8 we have next week, is called Continuous Learning and Adaptation. And whether you're an aspiring leader, a seasoned entrepreneur, whatever you happen to be, or just kind of seeking that personal growth, hopefully you found this series, The Visional Leader, the Road to Visionary Leadership, helpful to you in helping you along your journey. So as we wrap up the Visionary Chronicles, this series, I also wanted to put an offer out there for us. It's an exciting opportunity, but it's a limited time offer. So my upcoming book, The Visionary Leader, The Success Principles of the World's Greatest Visionary Leaders, is going to be released on June 30th through all channels. But I'm inviting you to be part of this journey. What I would like to offer is an ebook, what they call advanced reader copy. It's an ebook. And share your thoughts. Hey, if you'd like to review it, great. If not, I just want you to enjoy the book as being part of our listeners and reward you for putting up with me for so long. So, and it's through Booksprout, and it's a link that I'll send that you'll just go and click on that link and you can download your ebook. So hopefully you enjoy that. If you have any questions on that, or if you don't see the link, please feel free to reach out to me as always, whether it be this podcast, question you might have. You can reach out to me at brian@liquidmindsite.com. That's LIQUIDMINDSITE.com. Or you can reach out to me through my social media accounts. I have that very open. But any feedback that you might have or anything you would like to discuss, or if you want the ebook and you can't find it, please let me know. I'll put the link up on our social media post as well. But until next time, keep innovating, keep leading, and keep shaping the future. So thank you for your continued support, and I look forward to hearing from you in the next Visionary Chronicles episode.